Welcome, 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 everybody, to round 4 of March Madness Homebuyer Playbook Final 4. We are so excited to have y'all here today. I'm Marva O'Neill Taylor, and me and my amazing powerhouse partner, Katie Ann Brown, are so excited to present this event to you. Whether you have been here since round 1 or just joining, we welcome you. First, take a moment and just recognize what you've done. You've shown up, taken notes, asked questions, and done the work. You've made it through all 4 rounds, and that tells us you're not just curious about home ownerships. You're committed. You're not sitting on the sidelines anymore. You have moved from confusion to clarity, and that deserves to be celebrated. So put in the chat fire, celebration, anything to congratulate yourselves for making it this far. Congratulations for staying consistent, for believing in the process, and for taking steps that most people never even start. Today, it all comes together. This is where we'll talk about taking it from a vision to reality, and that's closing day. So let's take a quick look back at everything we already covered, because you didn't just show up, you built a solid foundation. Round 1 was all about building your dream team, understanding who's in your corner and what role they play. During our Sweet 16, we broke down the numbers, financing, credit, closing costs, and how to position yourself to win. Our Elite 8 round showed you how to protect your investment, how to look beyond the surface, and know exactly what you're walking into. And now, here we are on our final 4. Today is about sealing the deal, getting to the closing table, and walking away with the keys. This is where all the preparation becomes purpose, and we're going to show you exactly how that happens. When you work with us, you're not doing this alone. You're backed by a curated team of real estate professionals who are locked in on one thing: making your home ownership goals a reality. We're licensed and experienced across Maryland, DC, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Florida, bringing global knowledge and local expertise to every transaction. So let's meet our expert lineup.
Yes. One thing I really love about being a part of the Synergy group of eXp Realty is that when our clients come to us, we do not just provide real estate like our realtors services. We curate a whole team of professionals that our clients have access to. It doesn't matter what step of the process they are in. And that's why we have created our March Madness series to provide to you experts that we trust our network to support you through the buying process. Just like Mara stated, on our round 1, we met our mortgage lender, our shooting guard, and Christina Marati. She is helping us score big on savings, as in our finances, like securing loans, closing costs, down payment assistance. And during this week, she shared with us actual programs that we can get into to help us save on our home. And she is also someone that you can work with through this process. Last week, we met Phil Barrett, our home inspector, and just like a center, he's defending us against any unseen issues in the properties that he talked about how he has a moisture meter that goes around to make sure there's everything that you're walking into when you're purchasing the home. And it's up to you to decide if you want to move forward and how you can leverage the home inspection with the sellers. And today we're going to meet Erica Madden, our title professional. She's a title attorney. And just like a power forward, she's protecting us against any liens and unpaid against the property, making our closing process smooth and stress-free. And for everyone who has attended all 4 sessions and who will use our professionals in their home buying process will be getting a free home inspection, which is valued at $500. And this is huge because we know that buying a property is a huge investment and we want to set you up for success. Last week, we learned why a home inspection is so important, and we want to make sure that your asset is um inspected, that you have an expert team to work with you, and that we are helping you to avoid costly surprises. So let's talk about what is it like, what are the final days before closing is like, and what to expect. So the final days before closing, before you get to the closing table, is huge. So first off, as we talked about, we went through the whole loan process with Christina. We got our property inspected with Phil, and we're working with Erica and Universal Titles, and they're making sure that there are no liens, there are no unpaid debt, everything. But now we're up to the final around 78 hours. I mean, 72, 72 hours. This is when we're going to walk through the property. If we had negotiated any repairs on the property, we're going to make sure that those repairs were completed. We're going to turn on all the faucets, turn on the lights, make sure the plumbing and the electrics are in working order. We're just making sure that we're stepping into the home that we have agreed to purchase. And then after we everything squared away with that, we're going to review the closing disclosures and loan documents. And this is where Christina, your lender, will have sent you the closing disclosure and loan documents around 3 days before the closing day. You're going to review everything, make sure there's no errors like typos. You want to make sure that your name is spelled correctly, like all of your important information is correct, and there's no surprises or unexpected changes in the closing disclosure or loan documents. Then you're going to prepare for your closing costs and payments. You're going to make sure that you can wire your funds and make sure that when you're wiring your funds, that you're wiring it to the correct place. Erica will also share everything pertaining to that because that's super sensitive information, and we want to make sure that everything is going to where it needs to go. And then we reach to the closing day, which is the best day. This is when you're signing all your documents. Um, Christina, your loan officer, will transfer the funds, and Erica will record your name on the deed with the county, and you're receiving your keys. And at the Synergy Group of eXp Realty, it is truly, truly a party. We are celebrating you in this huge accomplishment. And this is actually one of our clients with Universal Title. And I know that Erica could remember this moment, but it's just so special. It's so special to see all your hard work, all the time that you spent, the late nights, um, everything that you went through up into this point, and we are truly right there beside you every step of the way. And another thing one thing else that I forgot is that you need to make sure that you have your ID at the closing day, and anyone who's going to be on deed should be there as well with their ID and information. But just in case I forgot anything, our specialist, Erica Madden, she is here with us today. And let me tell you something about Miss Erica Madden with Universal Titles. Universal Titles, when I tell you, they work in excellence. They make sure that everything is in order. All the T's are crossed, the I's are added, and Erica really focuses on educating our clients on everything they need to know as it pertains to title. She'll share with you about, the importance or why you should even consider getting title insurance. She will make sure that every everything is good. She has over 18 years of experience. She is the director and business development and sales at Universal Title. She is a real estate attorney and she's a published author. I've been on many webinars that Erica has hosted specifically for realtors. Like, she really not only cares about educating clients, but also educating us as real estate professionals so that we're growing in our business and making sure that we are taking care of our clients in an excellent way. So without further ado, we're going to hear from Erica, and she's going to share a little bit more about, what a title company, what her as a title expert does, and what to expect during the closing time.
Well, that was an amazing intro. Thank you so much. I will say, one of the things I actually really love doing Synergy Network closings because they are my favorite, because they really are. I've always believed that the closing itself, which is the settlement when you're signing all the documents, should be kind of the final, like, coup de grace, like it's the celebration. And, I do my part, but let me tell you, like, these ladies go above and beyond on making sure that that is a huge celebration at the end. So, but you might like, we'll talk about that ending process in a minute. First, you may be asking kind of, what does a title company do? Like, what is the process? So we actually have a couple arms of what we do in the process. The first is, I like to say that we are kind of the legal arm. So we're making sure that everything is done properly and legally, that we are researching the title, which means we're researching the history of the property. We're looking to see every single person that essentially ever owned or had any type of ownership interest in the property. And we go back we don't just go back like 5 years, 10 years, like we go back to the beginning. And we are searching to see if there's anybody who, like I said, we're looking to see if a deed wasn't properly notarized or transferred. Maybe there's somebody who was left off, things like that. So those are kind of the title examination part. We're looking to see, are there any mortgages on the property that were not released with the court? So there's that it could have been paid off, but if it's still showing up as a lien on the property, then when you take ownership, it would still show up on your title. And we want to make sure that that's gone, that's not there. So we're looking to see, were there any judgments against the seller? We also check to see if there's judgments on the buyer, because if there is a loan, any judgments on the buyer have to be paid off before settlement as well, because a lender is not going to allow for that potential judgment to be in front of their loan for purposes of title and in the order in which title can be held. So that's the title search part. And again, the legal part is that we are literally examining the title. Then we have kind of, what I like to say is I played in the orchestra, but you could do it as a sport. You could say the coach, you could say the orchestra is the conductor. Well, we're kind of bringing all the parties together, because you have your agent represents you as the buyer. Then there's the agent that represents the seller. Then you have the lender who's working on representing the loan. We kind of represent everybody. So we're bringing everybody together. And we're talking to everybody, because we have to gather all the information from the seller. We need to find out who their payoffs are, if there's a homeowners association, front foot benefit, ground rent, who those contact people are. If there are judgments, we have to reach out with them and make sure we clear those judgments. So we're talking to the seller and the listing agent on that. We're talking to you as the buyer to find out, how do you want to hold title? Are you by yourself? Are you a sole owner? Are you buying it with someone else? Is that person your spouse? If that person's your spouse, then you would be what's called tenancy by the entirety. If they're not your spouse, then you would want to know, do you want to hold as joint tenants or as tenants in common? The big difference between those two, joint tenants means if you have two people on title and one of them dies, then the remaining person is your sole owner. Tenants in common, the one person dies, their estate still owns the property when they die. and then the other person owns the property. So it's still two entities own the property. So that's tenants in common. So we go through that and explain that. We're talking to, there's other ways too, like if there's a trust, things like that. I'm not going to go into too much detail on all the ways. Those are the basics. But then we're also speaking with your lender. So that's where we're talking with your loan officer, your lender. We're getting them and they need to see the title search. So they need to see all that we've done when, like I said, we were searching the title and what our examination is. And we're telling them, yes, this is everything that's on title. This is what we're going to take care of to ensure that you have clean title as the lender. Then we're also working with them on the numbers. So we are, as I said, researching payoff, we're calculating taxes, we're taking the Homeowners Association, all of that, those numbers. The lender then has their numbers that they're working on, which are basically their fees. Their fees. But even with the lender, there are certain fees that legally they are required to when they quoted you had to be exact. So their fees had to be quoted exact. That may have been discussed in a prior session, but they had to be quoted exactly. Recordation and transfer taxes, the government fees, those the lender had to quote you exactly. If they didn't, then the lender actually has to eat those fees. So that's where, and again, not all fees. So don't call your lender and say, wait, you didn't, but there are specific fees, essentially, like I said, their fees and the government fees that have to be quoted to you exactly. But we're working with them on those numbers to get all our numbers and all their numbers all on the same sheet, which is that closing disclosure. And then there's also what we have is called the ALTA. The ALTA is created by the American Land Title Association. So the closing disclosure is an actual lender document. It's part of the loan documents that you're signing that tells you what all the fees are. It also tells you, what your monthly payment's going to be, what type of loan program you have, all of that. That legally, nobody can share that except with the lender to you as the buyer. So that can't even be shared with your agent. That is only to the buyer. And I can't share that with anybody as the title company. So what happened was the American Land Title Association realized, wait a second, we need a document that we actually can share with people. And that's what the ALTA is. So you'll hear it that way. And that has then all the seller numbers, all the buyer numbers, how it all comes together, and then the bottom line of what you would need to bring to closing. So with that part, then that's the other question I get a lot of times is, as a buyer, am I writing like 20 checks? Am I coming to closing, writing a check to the title company and a check to the agent, and a check to the, homeowners association? No, you are writing one check for all intents and purposes, made out to Universal Title. And then we, as the escrow agent, so you may have heard that term before, as the escrow agent, our job is to then cut all the 50,000 checks and send and disperse them to everyone. So you, at closing, like I said, it's one. Now, you could bring a certified check, but a wire is preferred. A lot of people are concerned about sending a wire because there's a lot of wire fraud going on. So my two pieces of advice with regard to a wire to ensure that you are actually wiring to the right person. One of the fraud things that happens is that you would get an email from, let's say, Katie, or you would get it from your loan officer saying, hey, I just spoke with Erica at Universal Title. She said to go ahead and send the wire of $50,000. And it has wiring instructions on there. Don't ever send a wire based on that. That is probably a fraudulent email, but that is the most common of what happens. For our purposes, in order to protect the sanctity of our wire information, actually, nobody has it but you as the buyer, and we provide it through our portal called Qualia, which is our secure portal. You can only pull the wire instructions from that portal. You would take them to the bank, and then you would order the wire that way. The secondary part, if you wanted to be extra careful, is I always recommend then, you've pulled our wiring instructions, now Google search. Do a Google search. In my office is Universal Title Howard County. Google search, Universal Title Howard County, and call that number that's on Google. It will take you to Shelby or to Taser, whoever is working on the file, but it would go to our receptionist essentially, and you would just say, I just pulled the wiring instructions. Can I confirm the wiring instructions? That is a secondary, just to double check that you definitely have it. And a lot of times, sometimes the bank actually will go ahead and do that. So like if you gave them the wiring instructions, the bank, because of their own precautionary measures, may actually call us and say, hey, I have wiring instructions. Can you confirm these are yours? So like I said, that's the issue with the wire. I'm asked, when should you send the wire? Honestly, I would say at least try and do it 24 hours in advance. You may not have the final numbers 24 hours in advance. And I just want to clear that up, because you may say, wait a second, but I was sent the closing disclosure 3 days before closing. Unfortunately, you were sent the closing disclosure, but those numbers could change. So it may not be the final. So that's where it's calling your loan officer or calling my office and saying, can you give me an estimate of how much I should bring? We're usually going to tell you more than you need. So like this way, I'd rather give you a check back at closing than have you figure out how you're going to get a check at closing. And shockingly, a lot of people don't have checks. I say that I don't have checks. I just ran out of my check. So, but those are just some key things. But is the wire, and then the final part of what we do is I actually then sit at the closing table. So now I have the numbers, I have the loan documents from your lender. There used to be where it was common that we had buyers and sellers all at the settlement table together, and it was a huge celebration, or maybe it wasn't. Like, I can't remember. You never know. Some people weren't so happy. But what happened was with COVID, it ended up that now sellers kind of want to do their own time. They don't want to be beholden to the buyer's time. So a lot of times now the sellers will actually pre-sign, meaning they'll either come into my office or we'll have them sign all the documents before you as the buyer come in. So don't be surprised if the seller's not there. So that's where if there are questions you wanted to know about the house or things like that, maybe, again, ask your agent, and then they can get that information from the seller in advance. And a lot of times sellers will leave like a nice note in the property or something like that. Or if it's really important to you that the seller's there, just let us all know, and we can try and see if the seller can make it to the closing. But otherwise, literally at that point, you're coming to the table. I have the loan documents from your lender. The deed should have been signed by the seller, or like I said, they're going to sit there and sign it in front of you. And I have the numbers, and hopefully you've sent your wire, and I have the wire from your lender. And now we're just going to sit at the closing table, and I'm going to go through all the documents. It may seem daunting. I promise you it's not. And again, with the team that you have put together, you really, by the time you get to the closing table, you're just going to sign. Like, you're just so excited. You've already been prepared. You know what your documents you're going to sign. But even if not, like I said, I go through them all with you in detail. We make sure you're comfortable. Typically, the closing, I get asked how long it can take. My answer really is, how fast can you sign? I mean, if you want to sit there, I will say this. If you are somebody who wants to read every single document, you need to let us all know in advance so we can make sure you have all those documents in advance to review, and so that you can read them at your leisure, and then you're coming to closing and I'm just going through some and we're signing. But otherwise, like I said, the settlement itself, we should be in and out within an hour. And that includes like the celebration. So the document signing and all that, probably 30 to 45 minutes. And then we spend about 15 minutes just taking pictures, giving you the keys, celebrating, having cake, doing a toast, all of that. And then in Maryland also, so I don't know if you guys are purchasing in other states, or maybe you watch HGTV and you see sometimes that people say, oh, well, I signed the documents, now I'm sitting in escrow. That is because California is what's called an escrow state or a dry state. Virginia also is a dry state. There's many states that are dry states. What that means is you actually don't own the property until we record all the documents with the court. So you wouldn't be able to move in, seller wouldn't get paid, all that. That's a dry state. Maryland, luckily for you guys, is a wet state, meaning once we're done signing all those documents and I have all the money, you own the property. You can literally leave the closing table and go move into your property immediately. So that's in case you ever hear like wet or dry, or somebody from another state tries to tell you something, that's it. And I forgot the biggest part of what a title company does, which is we sell title insurance. So title insurance, you may have heard of that. What that is it basically ensures your interest in the property. So it makes sure, and I will say this, not to scare you, but I feel like I have to answer this question. I get asked sometimes, why am I buying insurance, Erica, to make sure that you did your job properly? I think that's a fair question. I'm not going to sit here and say that's an unfair question. I used to, when I was younger, I thought it was, like a little unfair of a question. But now what I've realized is at the end of the day, and I hate to say this to you, but anybody can sue you for anything at any time. And your house is collateral. And so the title insurance essentially protects you against somebody coming forward out of the woodwork who maybe will not even win a lawsuit to say that they have an ownership interest, or they want to place a judgment, or they committed fraud and forged your name on a loan or some kind of document. That's what the title insurance protects against. So yes, it protects against the unknown that are legitimate lawsuits that potentially they could win, but it also protects you on the ones that really are frivolous. The issue with both of those, you still have to pay attorneys and court costs to fight those lawsuits. And those are in the tens of thousands of dollars. So what I always say is title insurance is a good way to say, you know what, it's like any insurance, but it's essentially you're paying a few hours of attorney fees that hopefully you will never actually have to use. And so there are a couple, you may hear there's three types of policies. There's a lender policy, a basic owner's policy, and an enhanced owner's policy. I will start out by saying it is not required that you buy an owner's policy. However, as I mentioned, it is highly recommended. A lender, however, does require that you buy their policy. So you are required to buy the lender's policy. The difference between the basic title policy and the enhanced policy, the basic policy would only protect you against anything that could have attached in the future. I'm sorry, in the past, and only up to the sales price. The enhanced policy protects you on all the things the basic policy does, but it also protects you into the future and up to 150% of the purchase price. So it has an increasing value over time. And also, as I said, the future, that's the example of where I said somebody steals your identity, commits some type of fraud or forgery on you that could affect the property. That's an enhanced policy. Mechanics liens, enhanced policy. One question I get sometimes is, I'm buying a new construction property. Do I need title insurance? Yes. One of the big reasons, mechanics liens. And again, people think like the property, it's like the title. It's still the history. Essentially, it's the history of the land, not the history of the house itself. It's the history of the ownership of the land. So I think, did I answer? Does anybody have any questions? Or I don't know if you guys do questions, or you guys take it back. I'm done. I think I went through everything, but is there anything else you guys can think of?
So I'm looking in the chat to see if anyone has any questions. Okay, I do not see any questions so far.
I have a question. Can you request, you mentioned the history of the land or the, I guess, the property. Can you request that? Like you can see who was the previous owners, or is that something you get public record yourself?
It's public record. However, so the website is called mdlandrec.net. Anybody can log in, anybody can do the search, but you can also just ask me because I know how to maneuver it easily. But that's it is public record. So
yeah, that's why I asked, because I've tried to search properties purple, and it can be a little tedious trying to pull up and know what documents to look at. So
Yeah.
that's why I was asking.
Well, and that's where I will say too, so I can look up, so let's say, like I can look up easily or pretty easily on my part, the history of the property. Like I can sit there and go through the history as far as the ownership. I can find most of the liens. What the title search, what we hire somebody to do the title abstract, they're basically professionals at it. And they're able to find easements. I can't find an easement unless I ask that seller, can I see your your title policy or your title commitment? That'll tell me whoever pulled the title last time. They're going to find though your easements. They're going to find covenants. They're going to find, they may find mortgages I'm not able to find. So they know it, and it's more of like, I guess, knowledge based on how to maneuver the system best. Like that's their role, and they're professionals at it, is actually digging into all those documents and the whole history of the property. They supply us those documents, and then, like I said, as the attorney, then I'm doing what's called examining the title, and I'm going through it, document by document to make sure, that everything's good.
Okay, and that's just in terms of who owned the property, nothing to do with the structure and what was built. That's something totally different.
Yeah, as far as the structure itself and the history, like if they did repairs and stuff like that, no, the seller would disclose it. But actually, here's like another. Did you guys have you did not have an insurance person come on, right? One thing that you could do is, if you have an insurance agent that you're working with or you're interested in working with, when you go look at a property, or at least before writing a contract on the property, ask that insurance agent for what's called the CLUE report, CLUE. It is similar to how, like, when you buy a car, you get Carfax, which is every insurance claim that's been made on that car. That's what the CLUE report does. And it gives you that's how you can find out maybe a little more than what the seller's actually disclosing to you. Because you may find out on the CLUE report that, there was damage in the basement, or a tree fell in the house, or mold remediation, whatever it is, things like that. That's all going to show up on the CLUE report. So you have a little bit more information than you started with.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for, information like that, because the properties I have been looking at are very old. I know we are going to be I'm going to be hiring an inspector, but I still want to do my own homework.
Yeah, that's where if you ask the insurance agent, because like I said, it's every insurance claim, and it's something you should do regardless, because that's one thing with the actual contract, not to get too like into the weeds with the legal part, but once you enter in the contract, like, you can't get out of the contract because the insurance is too expensive, or the flooded, like, basically you had to do your due diligence before entering into the contract. The CLUE report helps you with that, because then also, if there was a lot of damages, if there were a lot of insurance claims, if there were a lot of, whatever, if it is maybe a riskier property, your insurance cost is going to be way more than it would be on another property, which could then, make it that this property is not as desirable because of that insurance cost. And it's better to know that before going into the contract and being able to do something about it than after being under contract and now you're stuck.
So
okay, that CLUE report comes from the insurance company.
Said, yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm from Texas, so I say insurance.
So we have a question in the chat. It says, how does the process work regarding transfer of property to a person later on after purchasing? For example, a father to a son, and are there fees associated with that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And actually, I'll answer another question too, which is how you set up like to have heirs and stuff. So remind me to come back to that question. But let's say I see it a lot of times where people want to add their spouse, or they, you know, again, a father, son, for estate planning purposes, things like that. That you can always do after closing. I will say it depends on the county. I know if you're in Prince George's County, they are not exempt. So they actually charge full transfer and recordation taxes. It's crazy on those transfers. But most counties, because it does say it in the state code, if it's certain transfers are exempt. So I always say it's about $650. That would cover the preparation and the recording and all that. If you're adding a girlfriend, if you're adding just a friend, somebody who is not, think of it as like linearly related to you, or an actual spouse, then there are recordation and transfer taxes. But if it is, like I said, like mother, child, a lot of times even like stepmother, like those kind of things, that's exempt as well. Girlfriend and boyfriend could be, or could be exempt if you call it a domestic partnership. But there are some steps we have to take to prove that it is a true domestic partnership. Like, are you on insurance together? Are you on bank accounts together? And you have to show those forms of proof to get that that done. As far as if you wanted to set the deed up for estate planning purposes, which is what a lot of people do when it is like, if I want to make sure that when I die, if I own my house as a sole owner, that when I die, the property is going to go to my children, I can do what's called a life estate deed. Now, the children do need to be over 18. So for instance, right now I have a 17-year-old daughter and a 20-year-old son. If I was going to do a life estate deed right now, I would do just with my son, because my daughter's not legally of age. So it could tie up the property. If I died while she's still 17, she can't do any, like that property is stuck until she turns 18. Or a guardian has to be appointed first. So we don't do transfers to minors. But a life estate deed essentially would say, during my lifetime, I can do with, and it's a life estate with powers. There's also life estate without powers, but we're going to talk about the one with powers right now. A life estate with powers means through my entire lifetime, I can do with the property whatever I want. And upon my death, it goes to my son. He doesn't have to go through probate. He doesn't have to deal with anything. He literally becomes the owner. But during my lifetime, he has no say. So that's a life estate deed. That's one way to do it. Or I could add him to title as a joint tenant. That also does the same exact thing. If, however, I don't do anything and I don't add them, then it would go through probate. So upon my death, he would have to go to the district court, the orphans court in the district court in the county in which the house is, and open an estate. And that's one thing too, in Maryland, he could open the estate and go to settlement like next week. So it's not, a lot of people think that the whole probate process has to be finalized in Maryland. In order to actually sell in Maryland, I just need the death certificate and the letter of administration that tells me who can sign on behalf of the estate, and we can go to settlement. The money goes to the estate though, not an individual.
And then the follow-up question is, would they be taking over the current mortgage, or would the new person, like the son, be starting over?
So if it's like in either the life estate or the joint tenant, well, in anyone, if I die and I have a mortgage, then basically my heirs have a choice. They can continue making payments on it and let the lender know that I've died. It's called the law of Saint Germain. They can continue making payments on it. The lender can't foreclose because of that law, but they would have to continue making payments on it. They stop making payments on it, they can be foreclosed on. It's essentially my son in this case would assume the mortgage in his own name, or just continue making payments until they sell it, or they may want to sell and then the mortgage can be paid off at closing. But yeah, the mortgage doesn't just disappear. My debt doesn't disappear upon my death. That's what the whole probate is for, is all the money, you essentially liquidate all the assets. It goes into that probate. Any creditors, any debtors, anybody like that takes whatever they're owed, and then whatever's left is dispersed to the heirs.
Okay. Did that answer the question? Okay, yes, they said yes. Okay, and then the last question is, what's the difference between a lender's insurance and a owner
Owners.
title insurance?
So, I mean, on a basic form, one protects the lender, one protects the owner. But a lot of people, it's a misconception where they think, well, why do I need an owner's title insurance if I've already bought the lender one? Because the lender's is going to protect me as an owner. And that is a misconception, because what happens is, in order for the lender's title insurance policy to actually be effective, so for the lender to actually make a claim based on the lender's title policy, essentially what they're going to do is foreclose on you. And now their lender's policy becomes an owner's policy. So it does not protect you. They're not going to care about you. They're going to get rid of you and then deal with whatever the issue is.
Okay, thank you, Erica. You have taught us so much. Okay, I'm seeing something else in the chat, but you taught us so much, and I love learning from you, and I know that everyone is finding a lot of value in this conversation. So, back with the question about transferring the property to the child, and they're asking about, so back with, pertaining to, does the mortgage, do they assume the mortgage? They're asking, what if the rates change, basically, like interest rates, that's what I mean.
I mean, the child at that point they could refinance, take ownership of the property themselves, or like I said, sorry, we've already transferred the property into the child. So the child owns a property. They can assume the mortgage. They can start making the payments. If they talk to a loan officer and they can get a better interest rate. So let's say like my interest rate, I mean, my interest rate's pretty good, but let's say, let's say my interest rate was like 9% and now the rates are at 6%. It probably would be in his best interest to go ahead and just refinance and take out the loan in his own name at a 6% interest rate. So yeah, they can, and what happens with that is then a refinance is where you pay off one mortgage and take out a new mortgage. So then that mortgage is paid off, and then this is the new mortgage with the same amount or less or whatever it is you want to do, and then start making those payments.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So before you go, we'd like you to scan this QR code at the top of your screen. You can use your phone to scan it if you're on your laptop or computer, or you can screenshot this page on your phone so that you can schedule your consultation with Mara and I. And it is super important that you schedule your consultation, because everything that we've learned throughout this whole series is general information, but we want to meet with you so that we can create and curate a specific plan tailored to you and your home buying journey. And that starts with scheduling your consultation. The consultation is just 30 minutes, and it's a time for us to get to know you and your goals more. And also, if you would like a free neighborhood report on your favorite neighborhood, write your name, your email, and what neighborhood with the states that you would like the neighborhood report on. Even if it's outside of Maryland, we can provide that to you. And this neighborhood report is a good opportunity for you to learn a little bit about the neighborhood that you're interested in purchasing in. You learn information about like the average home buying, like the home buying prices in that neighborhood. You can learn information like how big the homes are in that neighborhood, even down to the walkability score. Even it talks about schools, gender statistics. It has a lot of statistics. Whatever statistics are important to you, you can look and find that information in the neighborhood report. So go ahead and write that in the chat and make sure you include your email address and, as I said, the name and the state. And also with screenshotting this page, you will have Mara and I's cell phone number, office number, email, and social media platform name. And follow us. We share a lot of information on our social media. You can connect with us, talk with us, text us at any time. And we're so excited to continue and start your home buying journey. We thank you so much again, Erica, for being with us. And go ahead, Maura.
Yes. So we did it. We made it. We are so excited for everybody. Erica done gave us all the valuable information that she could right now that we needed. The next step is y'all scheduling the consultation so she can give y'all y'all can go to the closing table with her and for yourself and get your keys. And thank you so much, Erica. Now listen, we know this has been a lot. The terms, the timelines, the steps. It's a whole world when you're buying your first home. And if your head is spinning a little bit, it's okay. Because here's the truth. You don't have to figure this out on your own. That's exactly why we created this series, to educate you, empower you, and most importantly, to walk with you. You don't need to know everything right now. You just need the right people by your side. And that's where we come in. From your first showing to the closing table, we're here to hold your hand, answer questions, and make sure you feel seen, supported, and fully ready to take the next steps. You done the work, you came to the series, you shown up. Now let's take this leap together. Your keys are closer than you think. Congratulations, everyone. And we're so excited to work with you, close on your home, and give you the keys to your new home so you can feel happy, stable, and where you need to be at. So have a wonderful day, everybody. Thank you.
Have a wonderful day.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you, Erica.